Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into an absolute nightmare of a folklore survival story. We're talking about how a completely unsuspecting, quiet little settlement, the village of Manipur, literally transforms overnight into a hunting ground for apex predators. We're going to break down the mechanics of survival, the raw psychology of fear, and how the most unlikely people somehow manage to outsmart not one, but two supernatural killers. If you're a fan of high-stakes suspense and the really dark, terrifying corners of local legends, well, you're going to want to stick around for this.
Okay, let's just drop right into the horror with this actual confession from our source material. This is an invading supernatural threat casually admitting to a localized massacre. I've been wandering here for a week, eating the people. I mean, can you imagine waking up and realizing a predator has been methodically, quietly picking off your neighbors for an entire week, and the whole village just slept soundly through it? The sheer arrogance here is chilling. This isn't just some mindless monster, it's a highly intelligent, ruthless hunter who basically views the village as a fully stocked pantry.
Which perfectly tees up Section 1, The Village Terror Awakens. To really grasp the terrifying scale of this setup, you gotta know that this village already had a resident monster. We're talking about an ancient, highly territorial witch who lives in a dark forest cave. She sleeps for weeks and only wakes up to feed. But this time, she wakes up hungry, only to realize someone else has been hunting her flock. And who is it? Picture this. Dangling from a tree, casually eating grapes, is the new threat, Sheila. A modern, incredibly lethal city witch wearing jeans, actually complaining that the village doesn't have air conditioning and has too many mosquitoes. It's a clash of terrifying titans. A famished, ancient nightmare waking up to find an arrogant, modern killer already in her kitchen.
And that leads us straight into Section 2, a deadly supernatural pact.
Now, what's fascinating and deeply unsettling is that instead of destroying each other on the spot, they make the village their ultimate prize. The ancient witch, who is physically outmatched and nursing a wounded pride, proposes this sick, twisted competition. The rules? Brutally simple. Whoever hunts and kills 3 people first stays. The loser packs up and leaves without a fuss. They've literally created a deadly ticking clock, gamifying human lives while the village sleeps, completely unaware that a massacre is scheduled for the very next morning. Now here's where the suspense really ramps up. The witches thought they were completely alone during this negotiation, but they weren't. Hiding nearby in the shadows is a young village boy named Akash. He's paralyzed by fear, barely daring to breathe, listening to every single detail of this macabre plot. He realizes the horrifying truth. Tomorrow his neighbors are going to be slaughtered for sport. So he immediately tracks down his 2 friends, Burju and Sham, who are just as terrified. These 3 kids now have to execute a completely flawless survival strategy, or the entire village is doomed.
Let's look closer at their impossible situation in Section 3, overhearing the macabre plot.
Imagine the suffocating psychological weight on these kids. Akash, Burju, and Sham are hiding out, trying to outsmart 2 demonic entities. Literally 1 snapped twig, 1 sharp intake of breath, and they're the first victims of the hunt. And here's the kicker. They aren't the village heroes. They are outcasts. The village literally views them as a burden on the earth. If they try to wake everyone up and evacuate in the dark, it's just going to cause a mass panic, which means an instant slaughter. But Akash sees a twisted window of opportunity here. If his desperate plan works, they save everybody and finally earn some respect. If it fails, the village becomes an all-you-can-eat supernatural buffet. No pressure, right?
So how exactly do they pull it off? Let's break it down in Section 4, Locking Away the Prey.
To win this sick game, the boys realize the witches simply cannot be allowed to find any prey, at all. This kicks off a heart-pounding midnight race against a monster's appetite. As the village sleeps, the boys move silently through the eerily quiet streets. Step 1, gather the outcasts. Step 2, and this is the crazy part, they systematically go door to door, placing heavy locks on the outside of every single house, effectively sealing their own neighbors inside before dawn. They're locking the trap. Finally, Step 3, hide in an abandoned ruin, hold their breath in the dark, and wait for the monsters to arrive.
Just imagine the absolute visceral chaos of the next morning. The sun comes up and the villagers wake up trapped inside cages of their own homes. They're pounding on the thick wood, screaming, furiously yelling at the boys. They have absolutely no idea they've been locked inside to stop them from walking straight into the jaws of a demon. Meanwhile, Akash, Birju, and Sham are just cowering in the ruins, listening to the furious screams of their neighbors, knowing the predators are about to descend. Talk about terrifying. This brings us to the climax of our explainer in Section 5, the deception and ambush.
The sun is up, and Sheila, the modern city witch, starts prowling the suffocatingly silent streets, completely ready to win her bet. But she finds a ghost town, just locked doors everywhere. Now, instead of getting frustrated, Sheila sees a massive opportunity. She knows the ancient witch won't understand modern padlocks or why the village is suddenly empty. So Sheila concocts this brilliant, lethal lie, using the boys' lockdown to completely manipulate her ancient rival.
When the ancient witch finally shows up totally bewildered by the empty streets, Sheila looks her dead in the eye and drops a terrifyingly arrogant lie. She claims she basically lost control, that her stomach was so strong she didn't just kill 3 people, she devoured 150 people, all at once. She smiles and tells her rival that there is literally not a single drop of blood left in the village to hunt.
And the crazy part? It's a brilliant twist that actually works. The ancient witch is utterly shocked by this impossible gluttony. Believing her centuries-old territory has been completely purged, she just concedes defeat and leaves the village forever. Just like that, the first supernatural threat is neutralized entirely by intimidation and deception, which leaves Sheila all alone, grinning ear to ear, fully planning to casually break those locks and slowly feast on the trapped villagers whenever she feels like it.
Look at how this timeline builds the dread. Dawn hits. The hunt begins. By morning, the village is found entirely locked down. By midday, the ancient witch is tricked into leaving. Sheila thinks she's won the ultimate prize. And as afternoon rolls around, she strolls back into the village center to pop open the houses and claim her meals, completely oblivious to the fact that the dynamic is about to violently shift. Because as Sheila walks into the square, ready to eat, a horrifying realization sets in. Those heavy locks on the outside of the houses, they're already mysteriously broken. The village is eerily silent until it isn't. Suddenly, from the shadows of the doorways, the villagers pour out. But they aren't cowering prey anymore. The boys have let them out and told them everything. Armed with heavy sticks, pitchforks, and blinding fury, they surround her. Sheila realizes too late that lockdown wasn't just to hide the prey. It was to perfectly isolate the predator.
This is where the outcasts finally reveal their terrifying gambit. Rallying the armed mob, they shout out, "We laid a trap for you and you fell into it." It's absolutely brilliant. They use the city witch's own greed against her to get rid of the ancient witch, leaving Sheila totally surrounded and outnumbered. The villagers just violently ambush the invader, brutally beating her back until the terrified city witch flees the village for her life, never ever to return.
What those 3 outcast boys pulled off was honestly a psychological masterclass in survival horror. They didn't have magic powers, they didn't have super strength, they used simple locks, perfect timing, and the sheer arrogance of their enemies to turn an absolute massacre into a triumphant ambush. As you've seen, survival isn't just about hiding in the dark and hoping the monster passes you by. Sometimes it's about knowing exactly when to throw open the doors and strike back. So, it leaves us with this final thought to chew on. If you were ever forced into a supernatural lockdown, would you have the courage to spring the trap?